Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. My name is Sarah and today we are going to be talking about some summer reading recommendations that I have for you. So surprisingly, this was actually kind of a really hard theme to put together like a recommendation list for. I have so many like autumnal themed books or like books that give off like an autumnal vibe, but when it comes to like summer books, I kind of struggle to come up with some, but I do have 5 here. I picked them kind of based off of the setting or kind of the style of the story or even just like the vibe of the story that it gives off. So the first book that I recommend if you're looking to kind of add more of a summery feel to your reading list these next 3 months is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Now if you just look at this cover, it just looks like summer. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the art style of this cover. That's not really the only reason that I picked this. I picked this mainly because it's a very just happy book. It covers some really heavy topics, but it does it in a way that is just very hopeful and reminds me of like sunshine. Many of the characters remind me of little rays of sunshine, and I really adore it. So this is kind of a magical realism-esque book. So we follow our main character Linus, and he works for kind of the government orphanage system, and he does kind of checkups on different orphanages to make sure that they're up to par for different regulations and such. These orphanages aren't just kind of your normal type of orphanages. They are for children with magical abilities. He lives kind of this humdrum, very lonely life, kind of gray, if that makes sense. And one day Linus gets assigned to a rather highly classified job where he has to go visit an orphanage that houses some rather high-profile children that are very unique compared to the rest of the children that get housed in these orphanages, and he has to determine if it is acceptable to keep the orphanage open or not. And so when he gets there, he spends 2 weeks there, and he starts to kind of learn about these different children and then their caretaker and kind of what the whole system is set up there and kind of what these children have had to go through and kind of how this place has become a home for them. And it's just a really sweet story. It covers a lot of heavy topics such as like discrimination from a children's perspective, and it's just kind of makes it hit all the more harder, but the way that the story is told, and it's in a very dry humor, kind of witty tone of voice, and I just really love it. And the characters, the children are just so sweet and funny, and I love Linus and the caretaker's relationship, and I just really love this book, and I think it just reminds me of sunshine and a very warm, happy day. And then kind of along the same line of kind of like feel-good vibes, but with covering heavier topics, I would recommend It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. Now this is kind of an older-ish book, just in comparison to the other books that I have on this list. I think this was published in like 2006. 2004, 2006, something like that. This is the movie cover of the book. This is more like what the cover actually looks like, but with like different colors and stuff. So this book follows a high schooler who gets into this prestigious high school. He tests into it, and once he's there, he realizes that he's kind of not as smart as what he always thought he was. He's kind of in this highly prestigious school average, and he starts working himself harder and harder and ends up going into a deep depression and attempting suicide. And so he gets put into a psychiatric facility in a hospital. And while he's there for a week, and he meets several different people that all have various different mental health issues that they are working through. And he kind of starts to learn about what it means to live and kind of what's truly important in life. So this cover is very hard topics like mental health and depression and suicide, but it does it in such a way that it just gives a lot of hope to the reader. It's a very hopeful book. It is a funny book. This is one of those books where I really enjoyed it in like early high school, and it was one of my favorites, but it was one that I would always forget that I absolutely loved. Like, it was kind of like one of those low-key favorites, and I just remember really enjoying it and just having this like sense of kind of hopefulness and like love for the ability to be alive. Like I said, it covers heavy topics, but it does it in a way that is very hopeful. So I think I would recommend it for summer. And then kind of taking a different summery vibe recommendation turn, I would recommend Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. So this book is about a young woman who gets accepted to this very elite prestigious college that is kind of an experimental-esque college where the students that get enrolled are not allowed to leave the campus for 3 whole years, and they have kind of a different sort of learning experience, but every person that leaves and graduates from this college ends up becoming a very big influential force on the world. There's presidents, politicians, famous authors, famous scientists who make these huge discoveries. And so our main character gets enrolled in this school, and while she's there, she kind of starts realizing that there's some questionably shady things happening at the school, especially in their one of their more experimental departments. Now, that obviously sounds like a very dark academia type book, but the reason why I recommend this is because there are several moments for this book where it feels very like hot and stifling, if that makes sense. So you know the feeling where it's like the middle of summer, super hot, maybe your air conditioning goes out, it doesn't work anymore, and you're like very lethargic, and you're just kind of sprawled out on your bedroom floor, laying on your back, watching the ceiling fan go, and you're just kind of in this hazy half dream feel. And that's how this book feels when I was reading it. And I do actually really recommend listening to the audiobook of this book. I think that adds to the atmosphere and this like hazy half dream, lethargic, hot feel. I know that's like kind of a weird description or comparison, but there's several scenes where the character actually like experiences that, but overall I feel like the book just kind of feels like that. And I think it's because the plot is like very meandering to the point where it really doesn't feel like a lot is going on for a good majority of the book, or you really don't know kind of where they're going. But I feel like there's just like some days you just feel like having that sort of lethargic ambience, and I would recommend Catherine House if you're looking for that during the summer. And then the next 2 books I recommend more because of their setting. So the first one being All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. Now this is a YA fantasy. It is a duology. The second book I think is out already, but I've only read the first one. So this book follows our main character Amora, who is a princess of this kingdom that is like a collection of islands. And so she has kind of this, not necessarily like a coronation, but it's like this big test to prove that she is able to be the heir to the kingdom. And the way that she does this is by proving that she has a kind of solid and controlled grasp of the royal family's magic, which is soul magic, which is the most kind of dangerous kind, and one that they inherit. Everybody else in the kingdom can choose what magic they wield, but her and her family cannot. They are only allowed to use the most dangerous soul magic. And so during her performance it goes very wrong, and she's forced to flee in order to not be executed. And she enlists the help of this like rogue pirate that she breaks out of prison. And they kind of strike a deal that he will help her master her magic if she helps him get his back. And I think the reason why this feels like a very, very summery read is because it takes place a lot on the ocean and on beaches and islands, and a lot of the descriptions in this book are very, very vibrant and colorful, and it just reminded me of summer a lot. So if you like ocean and pirate-based fantasies, I would definitely recommend checking this one out this summer. And then the last book that I have is a science fiction novel, and that is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. So this isn't necessarily an outer space-based science fiction, it's more of an interdimensional-based fiction. So this is set in the future where we have discovered the ability to travel to different dimensions and different versions of Earth. However, the only people that can successfully travel to these different versions of Earth are the people whose doppelgangers have died on that specific version of Earth. There's this government program that hires people who have very, very few doppelgangers left on the alternate dimensions. There's only about like 270 or so that the government is able to transport people to, because once they get too different from like the host Earth, like their Earth, then they can't really travel to them anymore. So there's 270 or something that they can travel to, and they hire people who have very, very few doppelgangers left. So our main character gets hired because she only has 8 out of like the 270 or so doppelgangers left alive, and so she travels to these different versions of Earth in order to collect population, demographic, political, economical information from these other Earths. And one day, one of the 8 remaining doppelgangers ends up dying under very, very mysterious circumstances. And so she tries to go to that dimension in order to figure out what's happening, and she ends up uncovering a pretty big interdimensional conspiracy. I will say this is a very, very short book. It's like under 400 pages. However, I do want to say that Johnson does a very, very good job of taking such a grand idea of interdimensional travel and really condensing it down and making it feel like we are getting a lot of detail and development in this kind of more enclosed environment. So the reason why I want to recommend this for summer reading is because it has a very Mad Max-esque feel to it. It's very hot and deserty, gritty feel to a lot of the environments, and so it just felt very summery, but in like less of a ocean waves and beachy way, in more of a hot, stifling chaotic way. So those are 5 books that I recommend if you are looking for something that has a very summery feel to it. I'd love to hear if you have any particularly summery recommendations. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing. But as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!